The Centre for Mathematics of Human Behaviour is a research group here at the University of Reading in the Department of Mathematics and Statistics. So we're a group of researchers who are funded with a mixture of public funds and also industrial and commercial funds to look at complex systems which involve groups of people. And unlike other complex systems, we don't have molecules or chemistry or physics at the bottom of our systems. We have people, and they're the individual units, and they're awkward, they're inconsistent, unreliable, and yet we've got to be able to model, plan and anticipate how these systems are going to behave. The digital economy is something that the UK government in particular is really spending a lot of time and effort and a lot of resources on. And as people are moving around using digital assets, telephone calls, emails, tweets, loyalty cards, bank accounts, their phones, whatever they're doing, they're going to leave data, they're going to leave structured and unstructured data.
The Horizon project is a big digital economy platform that tries to explore digital economy from several different aspects, from human aspects, human-computer interaction, from technological side that it's behind, and from mathematical side that it's even more behind, so algorithms that run the whole thing.
We're seeing step changes in technology, so if you think about the way tablets and iPhones now outsell conventional computers, that's laptops and desktops. All of these assets get used in expected ways and sometimes very unexpected ways. These things can be transformative. Sometimes whole sectors get turned upside down. Now together we're trying to work through the Horizon Hub so that we can bring new research in the wild and new concepts to people that want to look in and take those out into their own businesses or their own activities.
So a network is sort of like an abstract representation of a bunch of things that have some sort of links together. So for example, we have communication networks, so who we talk to on our phone is an example of a network. Our computers are connected together and can communicate between each other in those networks.
Graph theory is a very well-worn area of mathematics where there's lots of wonderful work being done. But it's really based on the idea that the connections are given to you. But if you think about what's happening now, we email each other, we tweet, or we interact socially, and those connections come and go over time. So if I meet you this morning and you meet somebody else this afternoon, then my message can get from me to that person, but they can't send a message back to me because the timing of the links doesn't allow that.
Now in about 2008, we had a big sea change where we suddenly started to work on what we call evolving networks. So these aren't graphs or networks that just grow or graphs that remain static. These are networks where edges can spontaneously appear and disappear, a bit like telephone calls between pairs of individuals.
Before that, the static networks were more, kind of trendy. There were more research has been done on static networks. So evolving networks and how information on networks spreads was quite interesting to look at.
Things like messages and rumors and trends have to evolve over this evolving network itself. So really there's two sets of dynamics. There's a disease or a message or a rumor that's being spread that has its own characteristics, its own speed and its own probabilities. And then you have the connections themselves which can change. And that's a completely different but equally important type of dynamic process that you have to really take care of if you want to understand how these, for example, online human interaction data sets really evolve.
As soon as we saw these problems, we saw a whole array of issues that we would have to face. Inverse problems, constructing networks from the data. Inference problems, what kind of networks are they? Forecasting problems, what's going to happen next? Classification problems, who's an influencer and who's a listener in a network. And all of this done against a background where we needed to write, if you like, an algebra to describe evolving networks and all of the numerical methods necessary to unpick them. Lastly, there's a scale issue. These networks can be very large. And Des is brilliant at numerical analysis and has got a lot to say in those areas. So we kind of complement each other.
So an overview of Bloom would be we're a digital agency. What that means is a sort of ever-changing concept at the moment, I think. Principally what we do is digital marketing solutions for lead generation e-commerce businesses, and that's everything from web design, build, mobile applications, search engine optimization, digital media buying, and so on. Bloom's approach is based around insight and ideas. So rather than saying we are a web design agency or a mobile agency or a whatever it is, because the only constant in our industry is change.
My colleague Peter Laughlin had an idea, scribbled on a bit of paper, that we could use mathematical methods, properties of networks, and apply them to social media networks with a view to justify the return on investment from the social media campaign.
We're often approached by companies that ask us about our technology, and of course we're always looking for partners. So it's important for us to qualify their interest and to be sure that they're actually going to run with it, they're actually going to perform for us. Equally, they can challenge us, because they'll often say, well, this stuff you're doing in maths is all right in theory, but in practice the problem's got some other little rings and tricks to it, and you need to consider these things too. So it's not simply dissemination, it's actually a conversation.
We all went down there and we met in a real ale pub, which was fantastic. And as you can imagine, a meeting with 3 mathematicians and a physicist is going to be exciting.
Something clicked. It seemed that we were talking about the same things, we had the same ideas, the problems that we saw that were there were the same that he'd identified. And it just seemed that we were working on the problem from the same, we were working on the same problem but from different angles. And it was such a sort of organic, fluid sort of process.
Because social media marketing's benefit is often through word of mouth, there are a lot of challenges with showing that. So in the early days we were looking for how do we use data to answer those questions of what is the opportunity for the client and therefore how much should you invest in it, and secondly, did we do what we said we did from the point of view of return on investment. So where we've been focusing on and what we were looking to do was show it in a way to clients which they can understand, because it's extremely complicated, there's a lot of maths involved, and you can't go to chief exec who's going to give you 15 minutes and explain complex mathematical theory to them. We've got to visualise it for them in a way which they can go, all right, yeah, I get it.
Social media is a brand new medium, and at the moment it's not very well understood how to measure what's going on in that medium. The current methodologies that are out there are based on, we think they're based on looking at historical trends. The key difference with what we're doing is we're looking at it from the perspective of the properties of the network, using mathematical techniques for understanding what's going on within those networks. And I think that, coupled with the fact that as a digital agency we're really well placed for then applying that research to real world problems, makes this opportunity extremely exciting.
What we had was mathematics. It was a methodology for calculating the amount of information being passed through the network. So for each person, you can calculate the amount of information that person passes to the network, to the rest of the people on the network, or the amount of information which is passed through that person. And with that, this is called communicability. And the interesting part was that Bloom were coming with a real network, not just something which you've created, which is artificial. They come with a real network, and then you can calculate this in real life.
In terms of challenges, the big one so far has been the sheer size of the data. Think of how many people there are in the world, how many social interactions are taking place. What's the most amount of data you can get hold of sensibly and do things with is always going to be one of the main challenges. That seems to be something that Bloom are very, very capable of dealing with.
So the Technology Strategy Board, as I understand it, are there to help UK entrepreneurs and businesses be innovative with technology and create products and services, ideally for export from the UK. They provide a framework of contacts and support, but also importantly grant assistance. So they fund 60% of the project. You have to find the other 40% across a number of stages. So we've joined at I think it's the second stage where you're developing a proof of concept, and there's other stages before and after that.
We needed resource internally, and we were very lucky to get grant funding. And I use the word lucky not because we didn't deserve it, I just mean that things came together and we were able to put in a really good bid application with Reading support. And so that funding from the Technology Strategy Board has allowed us to take the pressure off for the first few months of the project.
The biggest benefit for working with Bloom was that they picked the stuff up and ran with it quite quickly. And so within the first 6 months we could see that they were working hard to make it successful, and we could see what worked and what didn't work.
It's really exciting for us because you know, the work that you do, quite often it could just end up in a journal squirreled away somewhere that no one will ever read. But actually to know that it's out there, being used by people and whether they know it or not, underlying the algorithms behind their work, that's really great to know.
We've got big ideas, but if we only get halfway along the road to those massive ideas, we have still achieved something quite phenomenal and quite extraordinary almost. And so the future is incredibly bright, and we wouldn't be where we are today without the support that we've had from the University of Reading.
The challenges of digital communication, digital advertising are going to get greater and greater. And what we want to do is to understand those bits of it we need to understand, which will drive us into thinking about new types of model and new types of mathematics. So for me, it's important that we have a balance between a range of different types of companies that are using our ideas, because they'll come back and challenge us.
I guess it's a pat on the back for mathematics. You know, we not only have the laws of physics and chemistry and fluids and weather forecasting, but it seems as though mathematics can also add some value in the slightly more woolly field of human social interaction and decision making. So it's a delight to see some of these ideas being pushed forward and used in a real hard commercial context.
To have something you can own and be completely unique and at the absolute bleeding edge of your marketplace in such an exciting area of social media is, you know, words can't really describe how exciting that is.